You've probably heard a lot of calls to save the planet and plant more trees when it comes to solving the climate crisis. But did you know that climate change is as much an economics problem as it is an environmental one? Economists deem climate change to be the result of one of the biggest market failures of our time. A market failure occurs when the price we pay for a particular good or service does not accurately reflect the cost to society. Fossil fuels are a perfect example of this. The price of oil and gas remains relatively cheap because the cost of future damages incurred by burning the fuel is not included in the price. Therefore, a single company can buy tons of cheap fossil fuel for their operations without paying for the damage they cause by burning the fuel and emitting greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide. Instead, every organism on Earth must bear the burden of polluted air, more extreme climates, and severe weather patterns. If you're thinking, that's not fair, you're not the only one. In 2007, the Supreme Court passed a monumental ruling in the case of Massachusetts versus the EPA that held the EPA responsible for regulating carbon emissions. The EPA was then faced with the difficult task of figuring out how to make polluters pay for the damage they cause by burning fossil fuels. Economists had various ideas, like implementing a carbon tax or setting up a cap-and-trade system. But for any system to work, we need to be able to put a price on carbon emissions. So, in 2009, President Obama created the Interagency Working Group on the Social Cost of Greenhouse Gases, or IWG for short. This group of experts was tasked with looking at scientific data and climate-related damage reports and calculating a value for the social cost of carbon, abbreviated SCC. The SCC is an estimate of how much money our society will need to pay in the future to fix the damage caused by emitting 1 ton of carbon dioxide today. Once the SCC value has been determined, government agencies like the EPA can use it to make policy decisions, like imposing taxes or regulations on companies for the carbon dioxide they emit, or granting subsidies for companies that reduce their emissions. However, calculating the SCC has proven to be complicated and at times controversial. During the Obama administration, the IWG included damages from things like changes to agriculture, increased energy demand for heating and cooling due to extreme climates, increased coastal damage, and increases in heat-related illnesses in their calculation of the SCC. However, many notable climate change-related damages were not included in the SCC calculation because their costs were unknown or uncertain. These omitted costs include wildfire damages, respiratory illness due to air pollution, ecological and biodiversity changes, damage due to flooding, and more. In 2016, the IWG estimated that the SCC value would be around $50 per ton of carbon dioxide in 2020, although many experts thought that it should be much higher. This meant that when creating and enforcing regulations, all federal agencies, including the EPA, needed to assume that every ton of carbon dioxide allowed to be emitted into the atmosphere due to lax regulations would ultimately cost society $50 in damages. Conversely, every ton of CO2 they prevented from being emitted by enforcing more stringent regulations would save $50. Then in 2016, Donald Trump was elected president. In March of 2017, just a few months after taking office, Trump signed an executive order that disbanded the IWG. This meant that federal agencies could each come up with their own SCC value to use in their calculations. Subsequently, the EPA, which at the time was also headed by Trump's appointee and climate change denier Scott Pruitt, slashed the SCC down to just $1 to $7. They did this by only considering the economic impact done to the USA when calculating the SCC, which many pointed to as a fallacy, since CO2 in the air can travel anywhere around the world and affect any country. They also used a higher discount rate when calculating the SCC. Whereas the IWG under the Obama administration used 2.5%, 3%, and 5% discount rates, the EPA under Trump's administration used 3% and 7% discount rates to convert future damages into present-day dollars. This meant that every ton of CO2 emitted was considered less monetarily damaging, so polluting companies were given a break. Fast forward once more to present day, with President Biden in the White House. Biden's administration has set to work reinstating the IWG and a common SCC number for all federal agencies to use. For now, the SCC will once again be set at $50 per ton, but it will be updated regularly according to the latest economic and scientific reports. Given that climate science has improved since the Obama administration, it is likely that the updated SCC values will include many of the parameters that were previously omitted. However, it is still unclear how exactly this will impact the regulations put forth by the EPA and other federal agencies. Regardless, the SCC is clearly an important number for lawmakers and businesses alike. The way it is estimated can shape how governments create environmental policies that impact our society for generations to come. Therefore, it is vitally important that we draw on scientific expertise so that the SCC can lead us to a cleaner, more equitable future.